Hello and welcome to the Sleepy Science. I am happy to see you here. Today we discuss the secret life of trees, how forests communicate underground. So let's start without wasting your time.
So get comfortable, breathe slowly, and let's descend quickly into the secret world of free.
First, whispers beneath the roots. The forest holds its breath as you settle into the cradle of its roots. The air hums with the quiet electricity of 1,000 unseen conversations, each rustling leaf and creaking branch part of an ancient dialogue that began when the first plants crept onto land 470 million years ago. As your body melts into the soft mattress of moss and decaying foliage, let your consciousness sink through the layers of time and soil, down to where the true architects of the forest ply their silent trade. Here, in the eternal twilight beneath our feet, exists one of nature's most magnificent collaborations, a partnership so fundamental to life that its invention changed the course of evolution itself. The soil beneath you is not mere dirt, but a living, breathing metropolis more complex than any human city. A single handful contains entire civilizations of bacteria, protozoa, and the star architects of this underworld, the mycorrhizal fungi. Their filamentous hyphae, finer than spider silk and stronger than steel relative to their size, weave through the soil in networks so vast that their total length in this small forest patch could wrap around the Earth's equator multiple times. These fungal threads form intimate connections with tree roots in symbiotic structures so sophisticated they've earned their own scientific classification, the mycorrhiza, or fungus root. As night's velvet curtain falls across the forest, the real work begins. The trees, having spent their daylight hours converting sunlight into sugary carbohydrate, now begin paying their fungal partners. Through sophisticated chemical negotiation, they exchange up to 30% of their photosynthetic bounty for precious nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen that the fungi's far-reaching network. But this underground economy deals in more than just basic commodities. It traffics in information, warnings, and perhaps even memories. Recent research has revealed astonishing complexities in this subterranean communication system. When a young birch tree's leaves are chewed by hungry insects, electrical signals travel through its vascular system at about 1 centimeter per second, slow by animal standards, but lightning fast in the plant world. These signals trigger the release of defensive chemicals not just in the injured tree, but in neighboring trees connected through the mycelial network. Even more remarkably, the unaffected trees appear to distinguish between different types of threats, tailoring their chemical responses based on the nature of the attack. The scale of this underground internet is mind-boggling. The largest known mycorrhizal network, discovered in Oregon's Malheur National Forest, spans nearly 2,400 acres through the root systems of a single fungal individual, making it one of the largest organisms on Earth by area. This living web demonstrates behaviors that stretch our understanding of intelligence. It can prioritize certain connections over others, shunt nutrients to stressed areas of the forest, and even appear to remember past disturbances in its growth patterns. The grandmother trees, those venerable elders whose trunks bear the scars of centuries, serve as central hubs in this network. Through isotopic tracing, scientists have watched these matriarchs redirect resources to struggling saplings, particularly their own kin. A Douglas fir mother tree can recognize the root tips of her offspring, favoring them with extra nutrients and chemical signals that boost their immune systems. When such an elder is injured or dying, she undergoes what can only be described as a deliberate knowledge transfer, flooding the network with carbon and defensive compounds while still alive to give the next generation a fighting chance. The sophistication of this system rivals our own technologies. Some mycorrhizal fungi function like biological encryption systems, their chemical exchanges so specific they can determine exactly which tree species they're interacting with. Others act as living databases, storing and redistricting nitrogen in patterns that suggest an understanding of seasonal cycles. The network even has its own version of cybersecurity. Certain fungi produce antibiotic compounds that protect their tree partners from harmful bacteria and other fungal invaders. As you lie here in the gathering dark, the air cooling with each exhalation, consider this: the forest remembers. Not with neurons and synapses, but through chemical signatures left in growth rings, in the spatial arrangement of root systems, in the epigenetic markers that tell of droughts survived and fires endured. A tree's rings contain not just its age, but its story, the hard years marked by narrow bands, the good years by wide ones.
One, to understand the forest silent languages, we need to meet it.
Some studies suggest this memory may span generations, with offspring of stressed plants showing heightened resistance to those same stresses, even when never directly exposed to them. The implications ripple outward like mycelial threads through soil. If trees can communicate, remember, and make decisions, if they can recognize kin and favor their offspring, if they can learn from experience and adapt their behavior, what does this mean for how we understand intelligence? The very definitions we've created to separate plant from animal begin to blur at the edges. Perhaps consciousness isn't an on-off switch, but a spectrum, and the forest exists much further along that spectrum than we ever imagined. The night deepens around you, the stars wheeling silently overhead as the trees continue their endless subterranean discourse. Your breathing slows, synchronizing with the gentle pulse of the forest. Somewhere below, electrical impulses flicker through root tips, chemical messages cascade. We stand at the frontier of a new understanding, one that reveals the forest not as a collection of individual organisms, but as a superorganism in its own right, a neural network of root and fungus and soil that challenges our most fundamental concepts of individuality and intelligence. The roots have whispered their first secrets to you tonight, but their full story stretches deep into the darkness, waiting to be uncovered in the chapters to come. Second, the hidden internet of the forest. The air hums with a quiet energy as dawn's first light filters through the canopy, illuminating dust motes that dance like stars in a miniature galaxy. You awaken to find yourself still cradled by roots that have continued their silent discourse throughout the night. Now, as the forest stirs from its slumber, we begin tracing the luminous filaments of connection that transform these separate trunks into a unified consciousness. This is no mere metaphor. What scientists once dismissed as fantasy now stands revealed as one of nature's most elegant solutions, a biological internet woven from living threads, where information flows as freely as the morning mist through pine boughs. Beneath your resting body stretches a network so sophisticated it makes our human technology seem clumsy by comparison. The mycelium, those impossibly fine fungal threads that partner with tree roots, form connections so numerous that a cubic inch of soil may contain over 8 miles of hyphae. These filaments are nature's original fiber optics, transmitting not just nutrients but complex chemical messages through their tubular cell walls. Some species glow faintly in the dark with bioluminescence, creating what researchers call nature's internet, a literal web of light pulsing beneath the forest floor. The largest known mycorrhizal network in Oregon's Blue Mountains spans nearly 2,400 acres through a single fungal individual, its genetic code remaining identical across this staggering expanse. What flows through this living web defies simple explanation. Carbon sugars travel from sun-fed trees to shaded understory plants at rates that vary by season and need. Nitrogen compounds follow sophisticated pathways that suggest an understanding of distributive justice among forest dwellers. But most astonishing are the warning signals. When one tree detects an insect invasion, volatile organic compounds race through the mycelial lattice at speeds approaching a centimeter per second, alerting distant trees to prepare their chemical defenses. Recent studies using isotopic tracing reveal that these signals contain remarkable specificity. Trees can distinguish between different insect species based on their saliva's chemical signature, tailoring defensive responses with precision that would make a military strategist envious. The architecture of this network reveals even deeper wonders. Rather than our centralized internet with its servers and routers, the mycorrhizal web operates as a distributed system where each node, each connected root and fungus, processes information independently yet contributes to collective decision-making. Some fungal species specialize in long-distance connections, their thick rhizomorphs functioning like broadband cables across the forest floor. Others form dense local clusters that filter and interpret chemical signals like network switches. The system even has its own version of cybersecurity. Certain fungi produce antibiotic compounds that protect the network from bacterial invasions or parasitic fungal species trying to hack the connections. As morning warms the forest air, consider how this living internet evolved its astonishing capabilities. The first mycorrhizal partnerships formed when primitive plants colonized land 450 million years ago, their roots too
And at the center of it all is a teeny alley most people never.
inefficient to extract nutrients from raw soil. Those ancient fungi, seeking steady carbohydrate supplies, became the original internet service providers of the plant world. Over eons of coevolution, the partnerships grew increasingly sophisticated. Some fungi developed the ability to break down organic matter in leaf litter, essentially creating the first soil. Others learned to store nutrients during plenty and redistribute them during scarcity, effectively inventing nature's version of cloud storage. The intelligence embedded in this system challenges our fundamental concepts of cognition. When a Douglas fir under attack by bark beetles sends chemical warnings to nearby pines, and those pines respond by producing defensive enzymes before the beetles arrive, is this not a form of foresight? When a mother tree recognizes her own offspring through root chemistry and preferentially supplies them with nutrients, does this not suggest memory? The network demonstrates problem-solving abilities that leave scientists awestruck. In one documented case, when researchers blocked the normal nutrient pathways between trees, the mycelium rerouted resources through alternative connections within days, showing a plasticity that rivals our own neural networks. Your fingers trace patterns in the moss as you ponder even more remarkable findings. Studies using microelectrodes have detected electrical impulses traveling through fungal networks that some researchers compare to nerve transmissions. The slime mold Physarum polycephalum, though not a fungus, it shares network properties with mycelium, can solve complex mazes and recreate Tokyo's subway system with eerie accuracy when presented with food sources arranged like city stations. If simple organisms can demonstrate such spatial intelligence, what might centuries-old mycorrhizal networks be capable of? Some theorists suggest the entire forest functions as a distributed brain, with no central processing unit but emergent intelligence arising from countless microscopic interactions. The implications ripple outward like mycelial threads through soil. Indigenous cultures have long spoken of tree. Their wisdom now validated by electron microscopes and mass spectrometers. Modern forestry practices that clear-cut entire stands may be severing neural connections as vital as those in our own brains. Climate change's disruption of fungal life cycles could scramble the very operating system that sustains temperate forests. Yet for all we've learned, the mycorrhizal internet retains its deepest mysteries. We've mapped only a fraction of the chemical words in this arboreal language, and the forest's full conversation remains largely untranslated. As noon approaches and sunlight dapples the forest floor, you notice how everything connects. The mushrooms fruiting near tree bases are merely the visible tips of this vast underground network, like data centers marking the nodes of our human internet. The breeze carries the scent of damp earth and pine, that distinctive aroma coming partly from terpenes, the very chemicals trees use to communicate through the air. Your breath syncs with the forest's rhythm as you realize we're only beginning to comprehend the sophistication of this system that's operated flawlessly for millennia without human intervention. The afternoon wanes, and with it comes a dawning understanding. Perhaps the most humbling revelation isn't that trees communicate, but how much more advanced their natural internet is than our own creation. Where our networks require servers and routers, theirs self-assembles from living cells. Where ours consumes fossil fuels, theirs runs on sunlight and symbiosis. Where ours crashes from cyber attacks, theirs has weathered asteroid impacts and ice ages. As shadows lengthen across the moss, a question lingers in the golden light: if fungi can weave such brilliant networks without conscious thought, what might they teach us about designing sustainable systems? The answer waits beneath the next layer of understanding, where the network's individual components, those remarkable fungi, reveal even more secrets about how they transform solitary trees into a conscious collective. As dusk gathers its purple hues and the first fireflies begin their luminous dance, the forest prepares to tell its next chapter. Third, meet the mycorrhizal network. The evening air carries the rich, loamy scent of awakening fungi as dusk settles over the forest like a velvet curtain. You lie upon the earth, your body sinking slightly into the moist humus, while beneath you stirs a kingdom far stranger and more ancient than any fairy tale. This is the realm of the mycorrhizal fungi, nature's alchemists, who transform soil into sustenance and weave solitary trees into a communal mind. Their world exists in the in-between spaces, where root hairs and fungal hyphae blur the boundaries between plant and fungus, between self and other, in an embrace so intimate that biologists still debate where one organism ends and the other begins. Breathe deeply, and let your imagination follow the path of a single water droplet percolating through the soil. As it trickles downward, it passes hyphae so thin that 10,000 could bundle inside a human hair, yet so strong they can exert enough pressure to fracture rock. These filamentous explorers branch and rebranch into fractal patterns that mimic our neurons, river deltas, and the large-scale structure of the universe itself. The largest known fungal network in Oregon spans nearly 4 square miles and may be over 2,400 years old, meaning its first threads began weaving through the soil when Athens birthed Western philosophy. The diversity of these fungal partners reads like a bestiary from some mycological Middle-earth. Ectomycorrhizal fungi fashion delicate mantles around root tips like living gloves, their hyphae penetrating only between.
But this network isn't just for sharing, it also warns for danger.
Plant cells. Arbuscular mycorrhizae employ more invasive tactics, actually piercing root cell walls to form intricate branched structures resembling miniature trees inside trees. Orchid mycorrhizae perform such delicate chemical negotiations that some species can't survive without their fungal interpreters translating soil nutrients into usable forms. And then there are the dark septate endophytes, shadowy figures whose exact role scientists are still deciphering, but who may serve as the forest's emergency responders during times of stress. What unfolds at these microscopic crossroads defies human notions of individuality. When a fungal hypha penetrates a root cell, the plant membrane doesn't rupture but instead stretches to accommodate the inviter, like a lover's sigh rather than a victim's scream. Inside this space called the arbuscule, plant and fungus exchange their very essence. Carbon sugars flow one way, nitrogen and phosphorus compounds the other, in a biochemical dialogue perfected over 450 million years of coevolution. Some fungi even produce glomalin, a superglue glycoprotein that binds soil particles into stable aggregates, essentially creating the fertile ground that makes terrestrial life possible. The sophistication of these exchanges would humble our most advanced trading systems. Studies using quantum nanoparticles have revealed how fungal networks dynamically allocate resources based on need and relationship. A birch tree might pay more carbon to fungi during spring leaf-out when nitrogen demands are high. A Douglas fir may receive preferential phosphorus supplies during cone production. Some evidence suggests trees can even reward particularly helpful fungal partners with increased sugar payments, a kind of biological performance bonus system operating entirely without conscious thought. As night deepens, consider the mycorrhizal network's role as the forest's immune system. When pathogens attack, certain fungi activate plant defense genes before infection occurs, like an early warning system that prepositions antibodies. Others produce antibiotic compounds that suppress harmful bacteria, effectively serving as the forest's pharmacy. The air grows heavy with moisture and the fecund scent of fungal activity. Recent discoveries reveal these networks possess capabilities bordering on the miraculous. Some mycorrhizal fungi can break down ancient rock by exuding organic acids powerful enough to dissolve granite, liberating minerals trapped for eons. Others form bridges between different plant species, allowing nutrients to flow from nitrogen-fixing alders to needy pines. In Australian eucalyptus forests, networks redistribute water from wet areas to drought-stressed trees during dry periods, a living irrigation system operating without pumps or pipes. Yet for all their benevolence, these fungal networks have their dark players. Some species like the infamous death cap, Amanita phalloides, exploit the system, offering little in return while siphoning off plant resources. Others engage in complex ménage à trois relationships. The mycoheterotrophic plants like ghost pipes, Monotropa uniflora, lack chlorophyll entirely and survive by stealing carbon from neighboring trees through shared fungal connections, essentially hacking the mycorrhizal internet for their own survival. As moonlight filters through the canopy, consider how these fungal networks challenge our fundamental concepts of intelligence. The way a mycelial mass can solve complex nutrient transport problems without any central control. The manner in which fungal colonies make decisions about resource allocation based on environmental conditions. The recent discovery that electrical impulses travel through fungal hyphae in patterns resembling neural activity. When researchers placed wood blocks in maze patterns, the slime mold Physarum polycephalum, not a fungus but exhibiting similar network behavior, consistently found the most efficient path to food, solving optimization problems that stump human engineer. Your breathing slows as you contemplate the implications. These networks have survived 5 mass extinctions while our own species measures its existence in mere millennia. They transformed a barren rock into fertile soil capable of supporting forests, grasslands, and ultimately human civilization. All our agriculture, all our ecosystems depend on these invisible partnerships we've only begun to understand. And now, as climate change alters temperature and precipitation patterns, we're discovering how sensitive these fungal networks are to environmental shifts, and how catastrophic their collapse could be. The night reaches its deepest hour, and with it comes a revelation: the so-called Wood Wide Web isn't merely a communication network. It's a living, breathing democracy where every tree and fungus gets a vote, where resources flow according to need rather than greed, where the very concept of individual success gives way to communal survival. The mycorrhizal world operates on principles we're only beginning to grasp, principles that may hold keys to solving our own most pressing challenges of sustainability and cooperation. As dawn's first light creeps across the forest floor, stirring the fungal kingdom into renewed activity, a question lingers in the misty air: if these silent networks can coordinate entire ecosystems without conscious thought, what might they teach us about building resilient communities? The answer waits in the next layer of understanding, where we'll discover how trees use this fungal infrastructure not just to share nutrients, but to send urgent warnings across the forest. Fourth, how trees send warnings. The forest holds its breath in the hush before dawn, that mystical hour when night's creatures retreat and daylight's beings have yet to stir. As you lie nestled between the roots of an ancient oak, the first golden rays pierce the canopy, illuminating dust motes that dance like fireflies in the
And just as trees can protect each other, they can also provide for those in need.
still air. This tranquil moment belies the urgent communications coursing through the soil beneath you, a sophisticated early warning system that has protected forests for millennia. Trees don't wait passively for danger to find them, they communicate, prepare, and mount defenses with a coordination that would make any military strategist marvel. Consider the humble tomato plant in your garden. When hornworm caterpillars begin chewing its leaves, it releases volatile organic compounds into the air that nearby plants detect, prompting them to produce chemical defenses before the pests arrive. Now imagine this same system scaled across an entire forest, amplified by the mycorrhizal networks we've come to know. When a birch tree's leaves are damaged by insects, electrical signals travel through its tissues at about a centimeter per second, slow by animal standards, but lightning fast in the plant world. These signals trigger the release of methyl jasmonate and other defense hormones that course through the vascular system down to the roots, where they enter the fungal network and spread to neighboring trees. The sophistication of this alarm system is breathtaking. Studies using isotope labeling have shown that trees can differentiate between different types of threats. The chemical signature for a munching beetle larvae elicits a different response than that of a browsing deer. Some species even tailor their defensive compounds to the specific attacker. Willows produce more tannins when detecting insect saliva but increase phenol production when sensing fungal pathogens. The wounded tree doesn't just scream a generic warning, it provides a detailed bulletin about the nature, severity, and location of the threat. As morning light strengthens, let's follow one such chemical message on its journey through the forest. A gypsy moth caterpillar takes its first bite of an oak leaf, its saliva introducing specific proteins that the tree recognizes as danger. Within minutes, the oak begins producing jasmonic acid, which triggers the release of volatile compounds into the air and phenolic compounds into its leaves, making them less palatable. Meanwhile, underground, chemical warnings flow through mycorrhizal connections to neighboring trees. These recipients don't wait for the caterpillars to arrive, they begin preemptively producing defensive enzymes and allocating resources to strengthen vulnerable tissues. Some trees may even release additional volatile compounds that attract parasitic wasps, natural predators of the caterpillars, effectively calling in aerial reinforcements. The speed and specificity of this communication network rivals our own emergency response systems. Research has documented warning signals traveling from tree to tree at rates up to several centimeters per minute through fungal networks, meaning a grove can be alerted to distant danger in hours rather than days. The signals persist too. Trees that receive warnings may maintain heightened defensive states for weeks afterward, a form of immunological memory that some scientists compare to primitive learning. But the forest's alarm systems extend beyond chemical signals. When drought strikes, trees produce ultrasonic vibrations in their xylem as water columns within them break, cavitation events that create sounds detectable by specialized equipment. Some research suggests other trees may hear these distress calls through their root systems and respond by reducing their own water consumption, a remarkable example of collective conservation in the face of scarcity. Similarly, when certain acacia trees detect browsing by giraffes, they release ethylene gas that warns nearby trees to increase tannin production in their leaves. Within minutes, the entire grove becomes less palatable. The afternoon sun now warmed the forest floor, revealing another layer of complexity in these communication systems. Trees don't just broadcast indiscriminately, they appear to direct warning preferentially to kin. Studies on Douglas firs show that related individuals share more resources and warnings through mycorrhizal networks than unrelated trees. When scientists injured some trees while leaving others untouched, the wounded trees sent more carbon to their kin through the fungal network, a form of nepotistic protection that ensures family genes survive even if the individual tree does not. As shadows lengthen toward evening, consider how these communication systems have evolved over geological time. The first land plants 470 million years ago faced constant threats with no means to flee. Their survival depended on developing sophisticated stationary defense systems. Early mycorrhizal partnerships likely began as simple nutrient exchanges but gradually incorporated defensive signaling as both plants and fungi benefited from shared protection. Over eons, these systems grew increasingly nuanced. Today's forests boast communication networks that can distinguish between dozens of threats, mount appropriate responses, and even call in predatory allies when needed. Modern research tools are finally allowing us to decipher this ancient language. Laser microdissection lets scientists analyze single cells receiving chemical signals. Terahertz imaging reveals the movement of defensive compounds through living tissues. Molecular biologists can now identify the specific genes activated when trees receive different warnings, discovering that some defense pathways are surprisingly similar to those in animal immune systems. Yet for all our advanced technology, the forest still guards many secrets. How exactly do trees interpret the complex chemical messages they receive? What mechanisms allow them to remember past threats? How do they integrate multiple simultaneous signals? Perhaps drought warnings from one direction and insect alerts from another. Each answered question reveals new mysteries waiting to be solved. The air cools as twilight descends, carrying the rich scent of pine and damp earth. Fireflies begin their luminous dance while the trees continue their silent conversations beneath your feet. In this peaceful moment, a profound
and perhaps connection brings memory.
realization dawns. These stationary beings we once considered passive have developed forms of communication as sophisticated in their own way as any animals. They share information, protect kin, and respond to threats with precision, all without moving an inch or making a sound our ears can detect. As your eyes grow heavy with approaching sleep, consider this final thought: if trees can send such detailed warnings without nervous systems or conscious thought, what does this reveal about the nature of intelligence itself? The answer may lie in the next chapter's exploration of how trees don't just warn each other of danger, but actively share resources to ensure the forest's collective survival. Fifth, sharing food and resources. The forest exhales as twilight descends, that magical hour when the last golden beams of sunlight filter through the canopy like liquid honey. You settle deeper into your mossy cradle, your breathing syncing with the slow pulse of the trees around you. While the world above grows quiet, an astonishing economy of generosity thrives beneath the surface, an intricate system of resource sharing that transforms the forest from a collection of individuals into a true community. Here, in the hidden vascular pathways and fungal networks, nutrients flow not merely according to survival of the fittest, but through something resembling forest socialism, where the strong support the weak, the old nourish the young, and the entire ecosystem thrives through reciprocity. Consider the simple yet profound act happening right now beneath your body. A mature beech tree, its leaves fat with summer photosynthesis, is shunting nearly a quarter of its sugary carbohydrates down to its roots. But these precious resources don't stop there. They pass through thread-like fungal hyphae into the root systems of nearby seedlings too shaded to feed themselves. This isn't accidental leakage but deliberate allocation, a phenomenon scientists have documented using isotopic trace. When researchers fed a mature tree with stable carbon isotopes, they later detected those same markers in neighboring saplings, sometimes within just 24 hours. The implications are staggering. Forests operate with a communal welfare system that predates human civilization by millions of years. The mechanisms of this underground economy reveal astonishing sophistication. The mycorrhizal fungi that facilitate these exchanges don't act as passive pipes but as active brokers, their branching hyphae forming what amounts to a living stock market for nutrients. They assess which trees have excess carbon to spare and which are in dire need, adjusting exchange rates dynamically based on seasonal demands and environmental conditions. During spring leaf-out when nitrogen is at a premium, a maple might pay more carbon per nitrogen unit than during autumn when sugars abound but nutrients are scarce. Some fungi even appear to hoard nutrients during times of plenty, creating underground reservoirs that buffer the forest against future shortages, a biological version of grain storage silos or strategic petroleum reserves. As night's velvet curtain falls, let's follow one such transaction in detail. A Douglas fir struck by lightning lies dying, its needles browning as its vascular system fails. Yet even in its final days, it performs one last act of generosity, flooding its mycorrhizal connections with its remaining carbon stores, which the fungal network distributes to nearby healthy trees. Meanwhile, on the other side of the forest, a young hemlock struggles in deep shade, its photosynthesis insufficient to sustain growth. Through those same fungal intermediaries, it receives sugars from sunlit trees at the forest edge, not as charity, but as an investment in the grove's future canopy. This isn't merely nutrient transfer, it's a sophisticated system of pension funds and microloans written in biochemistry rather than ledgers. The scale of this resource sharing becomes more remarkable when viewed through seasonal cycles. In temperate forests, deciduous trees like birches and maples act as summer philanthropists, their abundant leaves generating excess sugars they share with evergreen neighbors. Come winter, when the evergreens remain photosynthetically active, the favor is returned. The conifers become the forest's lifeline, their needles continuing to produce modest amounts of carbohydrates that sustain the mycorrhizal network and, by extension, the dormant deciduous trees. This reciprocal arrangement forms the backbone of forest resilience, allowing entire ecosystems to weather seasonal extremes that would devastate isolated individuals. Recent research has uncovered even more nuanced sharing behaviors. Some tree species appear to specialize in particular nutrients. Alders fix atmospheric nitrogen, pines excel at extracting phosphorus from rocks, and trade these strengths through the fungal network. Scientists using nanoscale secondary ion mass spectrometry, nanosims, have tracked nitrogen atoms moving from alder roots through fungal hyphae into nearby Douglas firs at rates that suggest active transport mechanisms far more efficient than passive diffusion. Even more astonishing, when researchers shaded some trees while leaving others in sunlight, the sunlit trees increased their carbon allocation to the shaded ones, but only if they were of the same species, suggesting trees can distinguish kin from non-kin in their sharing decisions. The air grows heavy with the scent of damp bark as you contemplate the evolutionary wisdom behind this communal economy. Unlike animals that can flee adversity, trees are stationary organisms whose survival depends on mutual aid. A forest where every individual hoarded resources would collapse during the first serious drought or pest outbreak. Instead, by developing systems that redistribute nutrient to where they're most needed, forests achieve resilience no solitary tree could match. This isn't altruism in the human, but rather what biologists call reciprocal altruism, the understanding that today's donor may be tomorrow's recipient, and that the whole community's survival benefits each member. Moonlight now filters through the canopy, illuminating another remarkable aspect of this resource network, its capacity for memory and anticipation. Trees don't merely react to current conditions but appear to prepare for predictable future needs. In autumn, many species begin storing carbohydrates in their roots even before the first frost, a strategic reserve that will sustain them through winter and allow early spring growth before photosynthesis resumes. Some studies suggest mycorrhizal networks may facilitate this planning by allowing trees to sense environmental conditions beyond their immediate root zones, a kind of extended perception system that helps the entire forest prepare for coming changes. As the night deepens, consider how these sharing mechanisms adapt to disturbance. When a wildfire or storm damages part of a forest, the surviving trees often increase resource sharing to help stricken areas recover. Ecologists have documented nurse trees providing extra nutrients to young saplings in damaged zones, effectively jump-starting regeneration. In some cases, the stumps of long-dead trees continue channeling resources through persistent fungal networks for decades, their woody skeletons serving as hubs in this underground redistribution system. The philosophical implications ripple outward like mycelial threads through soil. In a world where human economics often rewards short-term individualism, the forest demonstrates the power of long-term collectivism. Where we see separate trees, the mycorrhizal network perceives a community whose survival depends on interconnection. The very air we breathe, the oxygen that now fills your lungs as you prepare for sleep, exists because ancient plants developed these cooperative systems that allowed them to thrive and transform our planets. Your eyelids grow heavy as the forest's lesson sinks deep. Resilience emerges not from selfish competition but from intelligent sharing. The trees don't merely coexist, they actively sustain one another through systems of give and take refined over hundreds of millions of years. And as sleep finally claims you, a final thought lingers: if trees can achieve such sophisticated economies without consciousness or coercion, what might that teach us about building sustainable human societies? The answer waits in the next chapter's exploration of an even more astonishing possibility, that trees might possess something akin to memory. Sixth. Do trees have memory? The forest hums with a quiet intensity as dusk settles over the canopy, the fading light painting the tree trunks in hues of amber and violet. You lie cradled by roots that have witnessed centuries come and go, their growth rings holding stories of droughts survived, storms weathered, and fires endured. As your breathing slows to match the forest's rhythm, a profound question lingers in the fragrant air: can these ancient beings remember? Not with neurons and synapses as we know them, but through some deeper, older system of recording experience, a living ledger written in wood and sap and chemical signatures that guides their decisions years after events have passed. The emerging science of plant memory suggests that trees don't merely endure time, they learn from it, adapting their behaviors based on past experiences in ways that blur the line between biology and cognition. Consider the trembling aspen grove before you. What appears as hundreds of individual trees is actually a single organism, its interconnected root system spawning genetically identical trunks that can span hundreds of acres. When one stem encounters a pest or pathogen, the entire clone remembers this assault, mounting faster and stronger defenses when challenged again. This phenomenon, called priming defense, has been documented across tree species. Maples bitten by insects produce more tannins during subsequent attacks. Pines scarred by fire thicken their bark preemptively in later years. The mechanism
This memory may be especially important between generations.
are biochemical rather than neurological, yet the outcome mirrors what we call memory in animals, the capacity to alter present behavior based on past experience. Beneath your resting body, intricate memory systems pulse through the soil. When a young oak survives drought, physiological changes occur that aren't simply temporary adaptations but lasting alterations to its very architecture. Its roots grow deeper and more extensively, branching patterns shift to optimize water capture, and stomatal pores on leaves develop finer control over water loss. These changes persist long after the drought ends, effectively remembering the scarcity. Even more astonishing, when this oak produces acorns, its offspring may inherit these drought-resistant traits through epigenetic markers, chemical tags on DNA that turn genes on or off without altering the genetic code itself. Studies in poplars have shown that seedlings from drought-stressed parents exhibit different root growth patterns and gene expression than those from unstressed parents, even when grown under identical conditions, a clear transmission of environmental memory across generations. The night air carries the scent of damp bark as we explore memory's most visible arboreal archive, growth rings. Each concentric circle is more than just a timekeeper, it's a detailed diary of that year's trials and triumphs. Wide bands speak of abundant rains and long growing seasons, narrow ones whisper of hardship and scarcity. But look closer, chemical analysis reveals even subtler memories. The ratio of carbon isotopes trapped in wood cells records whether that summer was cloudy or clear. Traces of heavy metals betray long past industrial pollution. Microscopic resin ducts show which years brought insect invasions. Like reading an ancient scroll, dendrochronologists can decode not just a tree's age but its entire life story from these wooden annals. Some giant sequoias contain memories stretching back 3,000 years, their rings chronicling everything from volcanic eruptions to medieval warm periods long before humans thought to record such events. As moonlight filters through the leaves, consider how trees remember through their fungal networks. When a mycorrhizal fungus encounters a particular threat, say, a toxic metal in the soil, it can transmit information about this danger to connected trees even miles away. Subsequent research has shown these primed trees respond more quickly when they eventually encounter the same threat themselves, a clear example of interorganism memory transfer. Some ecologists speculate that old-growth forests may contain fungal networks preserving memories of environmental changes spanning centuries, with ancient mother trees serving as living libraries storing survival strategies for their ecological communities. Your breathing deepens as we encounter memory's most mysterious arboreal manifestation, the capacity to anticipate regular cycles. Deciduous trees don't simply react to cold temperatures by dropping leaves, they prepare in advance based on photoperiod, day length, which serves as a more reliable predictor than fickle weather. Cherry blossoms time their flowering based not just on current warmth but on accumulated chill hours during winter, an internal calculation ensuring they don't bloom prematurely during false springs. These anticipatory behaviors suggest trees don't merely record the past but use those recordings to predict and prepare for the future, a hallmark of sophisticated memory systems. The forest floor releases the rich, earthy perfume of geosmin as we ponder more controversial memory research. The Mimosa pudica plant, when repeatedly dropped without harm, learns to stop folding its leaves, a habituation behavior lasting weeks. Venus flytraps count touches before snapping shut. To avoid wasting energy on false alarms, even something as unassuming as a garden pea seems to remember and return to nutrient sources it has encountered before. Though trees lack nervous systems, some researchers propose that their vascular networks, capable of transmitting electrical signals, might function as a kind of distributed intelligence, akin in some ways to neural networks, albeit operating on much slower timescales. As dawn's first light spills over the mossy forest floor, pause and reflect on the implications. If memory can exist without a brain, if experience can be stored in xylem and cambium, and warnings ripple through fungal networks like whispers in a village, then what does that say about our definition of intelligence? The forest remembers, though not in language or pictures, but through chemical gradients, growth patterns, and cellular responses. An oak that endured the Little Ice Age may still carry adaptations in its very cells, resilience that, if we could decode it, might help its offspring face the climate challenges of today. Your eyes grow heavy with this final thought: human memory, fragile and fleeting, dances like a flame. Meanwhile, the memory of a tree endures, etched into annual rings, embedded in roots, held in the web of mycelium. Perhaps true wisdom lies not in speed or precision, but in patience, in memory that is embodied, slow, and enduring. As sleep takes hold, the forest keeps vigil, its vast memory murmuring through the leaves, preparing for the next chapter, where we'll meet the ancient mother trees who nurture and protect this living archive. 7. Parent trees and their saplings. Golden hour light filters through the forest canopy like liquid honey, casting a luminous glow over moss-cloaked trunks. Nestled in nature's quiet grandeur, you witness a timeless tale unfolding, an ancient form of parenting that defies our conventional ideas of family, care, and the transmission of wisdom across generations. These woods contain matriarchs of astonishing discernment, trees that don't merely reproduce but actively nurture their offspring with a sophistication that rivals many animal species. The latest research reveals mother trees, those venerable giants whose trunks bear the scars of centuries, serve as the beating heart of the forest's social network, recognizing their kin, allocating resources with precision, and even shaping the very microbiome around their children to give them the best possible start in life. Beneath your resting body, an intricate dance of recognition unfolds. When a Douglas fir mother tree releases her winged seeds to the wind, she doesn't abandon them to fate. Through the mycorrhizal networks we've come to know, her roots maintain connections with her descendants, able to distinguish her own seedlings from unrelated saplings through subtle chemical signatures in their root exudates. Isotope labeling studies by ecologists like Suzanne Simard have shown these matriarchs preferentially send carbon and defensive compounds to their kin, sometimes increasing resource allocation by up to 40% compared to unrelated neighbors. The implications ripple through the scientific community. Trees don't just grow near family, they actively invest in them, a phenomenon biologists term kin selection. The afternoon air carries the resinous perfume of pine as we witness the many ways mother trees guide their young. In the dappled understory, a hemlock seedling struggles beneath the dense canopy, its photosynthesis limited to just 3% of full sunlight. Yet it thrives because its mother, that towering giant above, funnels sugars downward through their shared fungal network like an umbilical cord. But this is no blind provision. The mother adjusts her contributions based on the seedling's needs and environmental conditions. During drought, she may increase water sharing through connected root systems. When insects threaten, she boosts defensive chemical transfers. Some studies suggest she even modulates the light reaching her offspring by subtly adjusting her own branch architecture to create ideal growing conditions below, a living greenhouse regulating shade and sun. As twilight descends, consider how these arboreal parents shape their children's environment beyond mere nutrition. Researchers have discovered that mother trees engineer the soil microbiome around their saplings, fostering beneficial fungi and bacteria while suppressing harmful pathogens. Their roots release specific chemical compounds that attract mycorrhizal partners ideal for their offspring's needs, like setting a child's place at nature's dinner table. Even in death, these elders continue parenting. A fallen cedar may take decades to decompose, during which its decaying trunk becomes a nurse log, providing nutrients, moisture, and ideal microbial conditions for its own seedlings to flourish upon. This posthumous care spans generations. Some studies document nutrient transfer from stumps over 30 years dead still supporting their descendants through persistent fungal connections. The forest's parenting strategies grow even more remarkable when threatened. When a mother tree detects her
But what happens when winter comes and everything seems to stop?
impending demise, whether from insects, disease, or drought, she undergoes what scientists term resource dumping, flooding the network with her accumulated carbon, nitrogen, and defensive compounds in a final bequest to the next generation. Some species like the Pacific yew increase seed production when stressed, ensuring genetic legacy despite individual mortality. This isn't passive decay but active knowledge transfer. The dying tree's chemical signals appear to prime surrounding seedlings' defense systems, effectively vaccinating them against the very threats claiming their parent. Moonlight now filters through the canopy, illuminating another dimension of arboreal education, the transmission of resilience. Saplings connected to mother trees demonstrate greater drought tolerance, faster growth rates, and superior pest resistance than isolated orphans. Part of this advantage comes from the fungal network's ability to essentially download survival strategies. When mother trees experience stress like drought or cold, they produce specific proteins and signaling molecules that prepare their offspring for similar challenges. Recent epigenetic research shows these lessons can become embedded in saplings' very DNA through chemical markers that turn stress response genes on or off, a biological inheritance of lived experience. The night air carries the faint tang of fermenting leaves as we contemplate the social structures emerging from this parenting. Certain tree species like African acacias demonstrate babysitting behaviors where multiple adults protect central creches of young trees. Others show division of labor. Some maples specialize in seed production while nearby trees focus on defense. The famed quaking aspen colonies of Utah, some spanning 100 acres and weighing 6,000 tons, operate as superorganisms where parent stems regulate water and nutrient flow to support the entire clone. These behaviors blur the line between individual and community, challenging our definitions of what constitutes a singular organism. As dawn's first light creeps across the forest floor, consider the philosophical implications. These mother trees, some over 1,000 years old, have witnessed human civilizations rise and fall while quietly perfecting their parenting strategies. Their success metrics span centuries rather than seasons, their maternal bonds measured in chemical gradients rather than embraces. In a world where human parenting often focuses on immediate milestones, the forest reminds us that true nurturing requires patience measured in decades, investment spanning generations, and wisdom written in xylem and phloem rather than words. Your eyelids grow heavy with this realization. We've long dismissed trees as passive inhabitants of their environments, yet they demonstrate some of Earth's most sophisticated care systems. They teach their young not through instruction but through embodied example, not with lectures but with chemical cues passed through miles of fungal networks. A single mother tree may be connected to hundreds of descendants simultaneously, each receiving customized support tailored to their microenvironment and needs, a parenting feat no human could replicate. As sleep finally claims you, the forest's lesson lingers. Resilience emerges not from solitary strength but from intergenerational connection. The saplings at your feet thrive because somewhere nearby, an ancient grandmother tree remembers centuries of droughts and storms, her very cells holding survival strategies that will sustain this woodland long after her towering form returns to soil. And in that thought rests a profound comfort, the knowledge that wisdom persists, that care transcends individuals, and that the forest, in its quiet way, has always known how to nurture its future. 8th Forest Intelligence in Winter. The first true frost of the season transforms the forest into a crystalline cathedral, each branch and twig outlined in delicate hoarfrost that glitters like shattered diamonds in the pale morning light. As you breathe out, your visible breath mingles with the mist rising from the frozen ground, this visible sign of life amidst the apparent stillness a perfect metaphor for the hidden vitality pulsing beneath winter's icy grip. The trees stand bare and seemingly dormant, their skeletal silhouettes etched against the leaden sky, but make no mistake, this is no deathly pause. Winter is when some of the forest's most astonishing intelligence emerges, a season not of cessation but of sophisticated survival strategies, slowed but ceaseless communication, and preparations so precise they border on prophecy. Beneath the snow's insulating blanket, the forest's heartbeat continues in slow motion. Tree roots, insulated from the worst cold by just a few inches of earth, remain active at temperatures that would kill most animals, their cells producing natural antifreeze proteins that prevent ice crystal formation. The mycorrhizal networks we've come to know don't disband for winter but simply slow their exchanges, some species of fungi actually increasing their activity during cold months to break down freshly fallen leaves into soluble nutrients. Even the apparent stillness of trunks and branches is an illusion. On a microscopic level, trees are constantly adjusting the concentration of sugars and salts in their living cells to control where ice forms, ensuring it crystallizes harmlessly between cells rather than within them. This isn't passive freezing but active cryogenic management perfected over millions of winters. The shortening days trigger one of nature's most precise biological countdowns. As early as late summer, deciduous trees begin monitoring photoperiod, the length of daylight, with a photoreceptor protein called phytochrome that essentially measures night duration. When nights grow sufficiently long, a cascade of hormonal changes sweeps through the tree, auxin production drops, abscisic acid increases, and ethylene gas forms at the base of each leaf stem, creating a separation layer that will eventually release the leaf in a process called abscission. But this is no simple dropping. The tree actively reclaims valuable nutrients first, breaking down chlorophyll and transporting nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium back into twigs and buds in an orderly withdrawal more reminiscent of a military evacuation than random decay. Some species like oaks and beeches even retain their dead leaves through winter as additional insulation for buds, a phenomenon called marcescence, only releasing them when new growth pushes them off in spring. The snow-laden silence holds another secret. Winter is when trees do much of their strategic planning. On warmer days when temperatures creep above freezing, maple and birches begin pumping sugary sap upward in preparation for spring, their vascular systems acting like slow-motion hearts. Buds formed the previous summer now undergo vernalization, a required chilling period that essentially prevents them from opening during false warm spells. Many tree species actually track cumulative cold exposure using complex biochemical counters to ensure they don't flower prematurely. Some oaks need precisely 1,200 hours below 40 degrees Fahrenheit to reset their growth cycles, an internal alarm clock more reliable than any calendar. The bitter cold also sparks remarkable collaborations. Evergreen conifers become the forest's winter benefactors, their needles continuing modest photosynthesis that produces carbohydrates shared through mycorrhizal networks with dormant deciduous neighbors. In return, the conifers receive nitrogen and other nutrients the deciduous trees mine during summer, a seasonal reciprocity that sustains the entire community. Some studies suggest these winter resource exchanges follow sophisticated accounting, with trees, remembering, who shared with them during previous winters and adjusting their contributions accordingly. As the afternoon sun glints off ice-coated branches, consider the tree's most astonishing winter survival strategy: supercooling. Certain species like yellow birch and black maple can lower the freezing point of water in their cells to -40 degrees Fahrenheit by controlling nucleation, the process by which ice crystals form. They achieve this through precise management of cell solute concentrations and specialized proteins that interfere with ice formation. Even more remarkably, some trees can survive intracellular freezing, a typically fatal event for animal cells, by producing protective sugars and proteins that prevent ice crystals from damaging cell structures, then carefully thawing in spring. The lengthening shadows reveal another layer of winter intelligence. Communication persists beneath the snow, while chemical signaling slows.
Even in rest, the forest remains aware, but is awareness also pain?
In cold, electrical impulses triggered by freezing or injury still travel through roots at about one-third their summer speed. Some studies suggest trees may use these signals to coordinate bud burst timing across populations come spring, ensuring synchronous flowering that overwhelms pollinators and improves reproductive success. The mycorrhizal network continues functioning as well, just at reduced bandwidth, allowing essential warnings about root damage from frost or rodent gnawing to circulate through the forest. As dusk paints the snow in violet hues, ponder the tree's preparation for threats only winter brings. Deer and moose, desperate for food, will strip bark from young trees, but birches and poplars increase production of bitter-tasting phenols in their outer layers during cold months. Rodents tunneling under snow may encounter roots packed with defensive tannins absent in summer. Even the tree's very architecture serves as winter defense. The downward droop of conifer branches sheds snow before accumulations can snap them, while the alternating bud arrangement of maples ensures no two potential growth points are equally vulnerable to freezing. The moon rises over this frozen world, illuminating perhaps winter's greatest marvel, the tree's anticipation of spring. Inside each seemingly dead bud, next year's leaves and flowers already exist in microscopic miniature, folded and preformed with vascular connections ready to expand when conditions permit. Some oaks begin root growth weeks before the last frost, their underground sensors detecting subtle temperature increases invisible above ground. Certain maples can generate small amounts of metabolic heat to melt surrounding snow and jumpstart flowering. This isn't mere reaction but anticipation, an embodied knowledge of cycles so reliable that trees stake their survival on seasons yet to come. Your breath steadies as sleep approaches, the cold air crisp in your nostrils. The lesson of winter is clear: intelligence isn't always about rapid response. Sometimes wisdom lies in slowing down, in patient waiting, in preparations measured not in hours but in months. The forest doesn't fight winter but collaborates with it, using the cold as both teacher and tool. And as your eyes finally close, a final thought lingers. If trees can exhibit such foresight and coordination in their frozen state, what might this reveal about consciousness itself? The answer waits in spring's thaw, where new mysteries of arboreal intelligence will unfold. 9th. Can forests feel pain? The forest exhales in the gathering dusk, the day's warmth lingering in the rough bark as you settle into the cradle of roots that have borne witness to centuries of growth and loss. The air carries the faint, caramelized scent of sap from a nearby pine where a broken branch weeps its golden resin, a sight that gives pause. Does this wounded tree experience something akin to suffering? Can the forest, in its quiet way, know pain? For generations, science dismissed such questions as romantic anthropomorphism, but startling new research is blurring the boundaries between plant physiology and animal sensation, revealing response systems so sophisticated they challenge our fundamental understanding of sentience itself. Consider the trembling aspen before you, its leaves fluttering in the evening breeze. When a caterpillar begins chewing its foliage, the tree doesn't merely endure the damage, it mounts a coordinated defense that begins with detecting the insect's saliva. Specialized receptor proteins in the aspen cells recognize specific molecules in the caterpillar's oral secretions, triggering a cascade of electrical and chemical signals that radiate outward from the wound site. Within minutes, jasmonic acid hormones course through the vascular system, activating genes that produce defensive compounds. Some of these chemicals make the leaves less nutritious, others attract parasitic wasps that prey on the caterpillar. This isn't a simple reflexive response but a targeted counterattack requiring precise threat identification, resource allocation, and even what appears to be tactical decision-making about which defenses to deploy. Beneath your resting body, the roots tell an even more astonishing story. When researchers applied gentle pressure to root tips, simulating an encroaching rock or burrowing animal, they detected action potentials, electrical impulses, traveling through the plant at about 1 centimeter per second. These signals originated from specialized cells near the root cap that function remarkably like animal nociceptors, pain receptors designed to detect potentially harmful stimuli. While plants lack neurons, their vascular systems contain bundles of conductive cells that transmit these impulses using the same ions, calcium, potassium, and chloride, that animal nervous systems employ. The resulting electrical patterns, when visualized, bear an uncanny resemblance to the pain signals in primitive marine invertebrates. The night air carries the faint tang of wounded vegetation, that distinctive, green smell of crushed leaves which is actually a complex cocktail of volatile organic compounds. These chemicals serve as both distress signals and airborne warnings. When sagebrush plants are clipped in experiments, they release methyl jasmonate gas that alerts neighboring plants to prepare their defenses. Even more remarkably, some trees appear to eavesdrop on these signals across species lines. Wild tobacco plants near damaged sagebrush ramp up production of defensive nicotine despite being evolutionarily distant relatives. This cross-species communication suggests an ecological alert system more sophisticated than simple mechanical damage responses. Moonlight now filters through the canopy, illuminating another dimension of arboreal sensitivity. The Venus flytrap's famous snapping mechanism, long considered a simple mechanical reaction, actually requires the plant to count touches to its trigger hairs, only closing after 2 stimuli within 20 seconds to avoid wasting energy on false alarms. Some sensitive plants like Mimosa pudica not only fold their leaves when touched but appear to learn, when threats are harmless, ceasing their defensive movements after repeated non-damaging contact while remaining responsive to genuine dangers. These behaviors, which persist for weeks, suggest a form of memory we typically associate with
And in all of its quiet activity, the forest teaches us one final
neural processing. As the night deepens, consider the tree's most controversial responses, those suggesting something akin to empathy. Experiments with garden peas reveal that roots grow preferentially toward pipes carrying water that previously nourished other peas, as if recognizing and seeking the experience of their kin. When silver birch trees are shaded by neighbors, They reduce resource competition by limiting root growth into their companion's territory, a restraint difficult to explain through simple resource optimization. Most startlingly, when researchers played recordings of caterpillar chewing vibrations to plants, while preventing actual damage, the plants initiated defensive chemical production as if under real attack, demonstrating an ability to interpret environmental cues far removed from direct tissue damage. The philosophical implications ripple outward like mycelial networks through soil. If a tree can distinguish between insect species based on saliva chemistry, mount targeted defenses, warn its neighbors, and adjust future growth based on past injuries, all without a nervous system, what does this mean for our definitions of pain and consciousness? The emerging field of plant neurobiology, controversial though the name may be, suggests we may need entirely new frameworks to understand experiential states in organisms so fundamentally different from animals. Your breathing slows as you contemplate the forest around you, not as a collection of passive objects but as a community of exquisite, sensitive beings, each responding to its environment with nuance and specificity we're only beginning to comprehend. The boundary between plant and animal sensation grows increasingly porous, both use electrical signaling, both exhibit memory-like behaviors, both make cost-benefit decisions about defense expenditures. Only our anthropocentric bias makes the aspen's jasmonic acid cascade seem less real than a deer's yelp when wounded. As sleep finally claims you, the resinous scent of the wounded pine lingers in the air, a reminder that the forest's experience of the world may be profoundly different from our own, but no less valid. Perhaps pain, like intelligence, wears many faces across the tree of life. And in that thought rests both humility and wonder, that beings so unlike us could share this fundamental capacity to sense harm, to remember it, and to act against it. The forest has always known injury and response, we're only now learning to see it. Last chapter. What the forest teaches us about connection. The first stars emerge like scattered diamonds across the violet dusk as you settle into the forest's embrace one final time, your body cradled by roots that have woven themselves through the soil for centuries. The air carries the evening's accumulated scents, damp earth, decaying leaves, resinous pine, each molecule a testament to the countless exchanges occurring silently around you. This is where our journey culminates, not with answers but with revelations that shimmer at the edges of understanding. The forest is not merely a place of trees, but a living testament to connection itself, a networked consciousness that breathes through every root, fungus, and fallen log. What began as scientific curiosity has become something far more profound, an invitation to reconsider our very place in nature's web. Breathe deeply, and feel the reciprocity in your lungs. The oxygen you inhale was once exhaled by these very leaves, the carbon atoms in your cells once part. This exchange mirrors the forest's own endless cycles of giving and receiving, the mycorrhizal networks trading nitrogen for carbon, the mother trees nourishing their young, the deciduous and evergreen species sustaining each other across seasons. Modern physics confirms what indigenous wisdom has always known: at the quantum level, there are no truly separate particles, only relationships and potentials. The forest embodies this truth at macroscopic scale, its very survival dependent on cooperation so seamless it challenges our notions of individuality. As night deepens, consider how trees communicate without the tools we consider essential. Lacking vocal cords, they transmit information through volatile chemicals. Without nervous systems, they send electrical signals through living phloem. Separated by distance, they gossip via fungal intermediaries. Their language operates on timescales we can barely perceive. A chemical warning may take hours to spread, a nutrient transfer days to complete, yet its sophistication humbles our fastest digital networks. The forest reminds us that connection doesn't require speed or complexity, but attentiveness to the channels available. Indigenous cultures speak of tree messages carried by wind and bird, of wisdom passed through roots, claims modern science now verifies through gas chromatography and isotopic tracing. The stars will overhead as we confront our culture's great illusion, the belief that humans stand apart from nature's web. Every atom in your body was forged in stellar furnaces, cycled through countless organisms before becoming you. Your mitochondria were once free-living bacteria, now integrated into each cell as energy producers. The microbial communities in your gut mirror the fungal networks in soil, both processing nutrients, both essential to health. Even our technologies imitate nature's blueprints, the internet mirroring mycelium, cities functioning like coral reefs, satellites orbiting as pollen rides the wind. As dawn's first light gilds the treetops, your breathing synchronizes with the forest's rhythms, the slow exchange of gases, the upward creep of sap, the imperceptible growth of roots through soil. Science now confirms what poets have always felt, that time among trees lowers cortisol levels, boosts immune function, and synchronizes human heartbeats to nature's steadier cadence. This biophilia effect suggests our bodies remember what our minds often forget, that we belong to this web. The Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, requires no activity, only presence, as if by simply being among trees, we realign with some deeper truth about interconnection. Your eyelids grow heavy with this final realization: the forest was never just our subject, but our teacher. Its networks model how knowledge might flow in a society attuned to mutual aid. Its resilience demonstrates how flexibility and connection weather storms. Its ancient trees remind us that some truths unfold across generations, invisible to those fixated on short-term gains. As sleep finally claims you, the boundaries between self and forest soften, the oxygen in your blood once danced in these leaves, the water in your cells once flowed through these roots. The separation was always an illusion, the connection, a homecoming. Good night.
And now, as you drift back from the quiet word beneath the soil, remember, some of the deepest wisdom is not shouted. It's whispered. Thank you for listening to Sleepy Science. Sleep well and let the forest dreams guide your night. Good night.